The UK will provide an extra £1 billion in military aid for Ukraine, a near doubling in its support for the fight against the Russian invasion. Now, this new funding takes the military aid given to Kyiv to £2.3 billion. And the UK has also spent £1.5 billion in humanitarian and economic support for Ukraine. Finland and Sweden have also been officially invited to join the alliance at the meeting that's been going on in Madrid over the last week. Let's speak to Professor Gwythian Prins, an emeritus research professor at the London School of Economics and a former advisor to NATO and the Ministry of Defence. Good morning.
Good morning, Claire.
This is an awful lot of money going Ukraine's way. Is it the right amount?
Well, the right amount is enough. But you're absolutely right to hint that this is a genuinely historic moment. The final declaration, which came out overnight from NATO, these things come out after every meeting, and usually they look a bit bureaucratic. But this is historic for the reasons that you mentioned. The adhesion of the Swedes and of the Finns is absolutely vital. So the money, yes. The weapons, yes. There's a crucial thing in the mix that's still missing, though, Claire. And this is that there's a challenge about looking clearly ahead about what comes next. And this is something which, frankly, none of our governments are yet doing quite as well as they should. However, there is some good news, because last week in the Churchill War Rooms, the Brexit Policy Centre launched the first grand strategy paper at high level, which links together Ukraine with Russia, with China, with Britain throwing off the establishment declinism, which regards us as being somehow a country going down the pan, which we certainly aren't, because we are actually leading the free world, as your introductory point made. So, there are important people who are now coming to the fight with ideas as well as money, and that's vital.
Sweden and Finland, I mentioned this just before our interview, now getting ready to join NATO. That marks a real turning point, doesn't it? But I guess, with their joining, that every action has a reaction, and we've already seen that from Russia, haven't we?
Yes, and there will be more. There'll be a hysterical reaction. They've talked about the usual thing, which is waving nuclear weapons around, putting them into Kaliningrad. But Mr. Putin, remember, has done all of this to himself. None of this would have happened without the invasion, which he launched, a barbarous and illegal invasion against the Ukrainians. Now, in February the 24th, so almost half a year ago. So entirely to be expected, and absolutely the right reaction. There is, by the way, a second dimension that he's now engaging, because the war isn't just now a war of weapons. I think many listeners will know that he's also trying to weaponize food. He's been trying to control the grain basket exports from Ukraine, going especially to the poorer parts of the world, which is an utterly despicable thing to do. And since we're talking about reports, next week, watch out, there is a second definitive report, which I've just finished reading, which is coming out, going to be published next week, which documents the failure of 20 years of the EU and, by the way, the UK's climate policies, which have translated into great fragility and risk of blackmail in our energy sectors and an increased risk of blackmail. And we know that to be true, of course, for the Germans. But the point of this report, which is definitive because it's all the numbers are there, is that it shows a very grim picture about a weakness which is, again, self-created by us, but which the Russian dictator, if he wishes, and I'm sure he will try to exploit more. So, this playtime is over. Let me put it like that. Geopolitics is back. And there's no time for virtue signaling and waving our hands around any longer. This is really serious grown-up stuff.
Great to talk to you as ever. Professor Gwythian Prins, emeritus research professor at the London School of Economics.